Assalamu alaikum students. Today we are gonna read about the unit which name is as mechanical properties of solids. And the topic which we have to go, that is the elastic behavior of solids. Before going through the elastic behavior of solids, we should be aware that what is a rigid body. What is a rigid body? A rigid body means a body, you can say a hard body, which is having a definite shape and size. Having definite shape and size, and its dimensions do not change when force is applied to it. Applied on it. So if you are having a body like this and you are going to apply the force on this very body, you are going to apply the force on this very body, and because of that very force, there is not any change in size, in shape, that is the dimensions, in its length, in its volume. If there is no change, then you will say this very body is what? A rigid body. But whatever bodies we come across, those are not completely rigid, or what I mean to say, perfectly rigid. Whether we are having how much hard body we are having, but once we are going to apply force on that very hard body, there is in some bodies there is a slight change, and in some bodies there is a large change, but they are going to change. There will be the change in its dimension. So what I mean to say that there is not a not a perfectly perfectly rigid body, because once we apply force on some body, there may be change in its dimensions, there are changes in its dimensions as a result of that, because the rigid body is having the definition that the body whose dimensions don't change, that we are going to say that's called a rigid body. But fortunately or unfortunately, we don't have any rigid body, because once we are having, but there are types. If some bodies they disturb a lot, there is a lot of change in the intermolecular force on applying a small amount of force. But if the same force is applied on a definitely a hard body, there might not be so much change. But if a large amount of force is applied on that very body, there might be a change. So first, the knowledge of rigid body you should now have in your mind. The concept of rigid body, it is simply the body whose dimensions, that is the shape, size, don't change when force is applied on. Secondly, what should be aware, the elastic behavior of material. What do you mean by elastic behavior of materials? We know when we apply force on a body, and because of that very force, there is deformation. Because of the deforming force, I mean to say deforming deforming force. So we're having some materials which some bodies, or if you take the solids, the property of the solids by virtue of which they retain their original configuration, their original shape, their original size, when the externally applied force, that is called as also what? Deforming force. Externally applied force, that is also called as what? Deforming force. Once that very deforming force is applied, and when that is removed, the body regains its original configuration, that is called as elasticity. and the deforming force which causes the deformation first and then the body is back. That is called as a deforming force. Such behavior of materials due to which they get slightly deformed on applying of external forces and regain their original configuration. So if we were having this as a body, and on this very body, once we apply the force on this very body, we apply force in this very direction. Because of application of force, this is called as deforming force, externally applied force. This very side, it is going to move like this. This will reach here. This will reach here. So once this very deforming force is removed, the body will come back to its original configuration. And on removing the force, we will see what elastic behavior of the materials. That is known as the elastic behavior of the solids. So simple concept here you have to understand is that once you are going to apply force on that very body, and because of that very body there is change in the intermolecular forces among the solid, among the body, and once that very deforming force, externally applied force, is removed, what happens, the body regains its original configuration, and that very thing is called as elastic behavior of the solids. What actually happens, if this is one of the molecule of the solid, this is another molecule, I will place it like this. This is called as a spring model. You have to understand that as such these molecules, they are like they are connected with each with another molecule with the help of springs, and once you are going to apply force on one, you are going to pull it like this or push it. So once that very deforming force is removed, there a restoring force gets developed. Restoring force gets developed. Because of that very restoring force which gets developed within this very body, the body regains its original configuration, and the regaining of that very original configuration, that is called as what, that property is called as elasticity. Elasticity is the phenomena of a body when we are going to apply the deforming force on the body. Because of that very deforming force, once that is removed, there a restoring force gets developed, and because of that very restoring force, the body gains its original configuration. So if we are having some length, if we are having some material, this is one of the molecule, and I will say this is another molecule here, they are connected. Once I will pull it like this, and after some time, if I will release the ball, it will come to its normal configuration. Once it will come to its normal configuration, that means there is some force which is pulling it backward, and that very force is called as restoring force. When a deforming force is applied on a body so that its length increases, then the molecules of the body come closer, then the and as a result of this, the spring is slightly compressed and intermolecular force gets changed. So simply I'm saying, once I'm going to deform the shape of a body, a restoring force gets developed which brings the body back to its original configuration, and that very phenomena, that very force is called a restoring force, and that very property of the body by virtue of which it regains its original configuration, that's known as the elasticity. This is one of the lecture that I have to produce today. Tomorrow I'll be with another lecture. Till then, Allah Hafiz.